Have you ever heard of these tutors that have this method for approaching the SAT reading section where they literally don't read the passage first and they go straight to the questions, and then maybe they never read the whole passage, but they go back and forth and back and forth? Well, in this video, I'm going to try that method, which by the way is not my method. I have never done it before, and I think it might be kind of dangerous. But how can I really comment on a method if I've never sat down and done it 100% myself? So in this video, I'm gonna try this don't read first, go straight to the questions method. There's a blog that goes with this video, so if you wanna cut to the chase and figure out what my opinion is on this method, my verdict, that's where to go. Quick caveat, this is different from the video where I literally didn't read the passages at all. I do have me doing a reading section where I didn't even allow myself to peek at the passages. And trust me, that's not the way to get a perfect score because you can't even look at the passage, you can't verify evidence. But we have a video on that, and I scored higher than you might think I could have. So we recommend you check that out as well. But in this video, I will be looking back to the passage. I'm just not going to read it first. Let's do this. This first question here is a main idea question. Obviously, when I jumped into this questions first method, I should have thought of that first. Most tutors that do questions first recommend that you do questions out of order. And essentially what they say is you should be skipping around on the questions and doing detailed questions first. And I didn't quite realize this was a main idea question until I kind of got into it. But I will say one tip is that usually the first question out the gate is a main idea question, so it might be good just to generally skip that question if you are doing questions first and start with maybe the second question. So number 2, this question is actually more of a detailed question, and I actually skimmed through the first paragraph already for number 1, thinking that I would find the answer there. One tip that a lot of tutors that do this like questions first method generally give is the idea that if you're doing questions first, the answers in the passage tend to track in order with the questions. So that means if I'm only on question number 2, then the answer choice probably should be earlier in the passage. I'm gonna go back to the first paragraph, second paragraph. Where I find the answer here is where it says this amateur fortune teller. So here's one of the problems. So though I did kind of cut back to the first section, I find myself kind of skimming a little bit, meaning that I'm not actually digesting a lot of this information because I'm really just looking for the answer. And that's one of the dangers of like doing the questions first method is oftentimes I don't log as well as I do if my focus is just to read. If my focus is both to read and to answer a specific question, I tend to erroneously focus too much on just answering this question. And had I read this the first time and logged it, I might have remembered, oh, his commentary on what kind of a guy the fortune teller was is actually directly right here on the word amateur. I could have probably gotten that better, again, had I read first as opposed to doing this method where I'm going back and forth. Question number 5 is really hard. Some of the answer choices, it doesn't seem like it's a main idea question, right? It seems like it's a specific question because it has the word dark and cloudy and gloomy. But whenever I have these primarily serve 2 questions, I call these function questions. And function questions generally, I have to know the main idea or the main idea of the section that it's in order to get it right. And so when I go back here, I certainly can get the main idea of the section that it's in, but I can't necessarily inform that very well with the main idea of the whole passage because I haven't read the whole passage yet. And I find that function questions are probably where this method goes to die a little bit. Even when I have students who swear by this method, they typically will still miss this kind of question. This tends to be like the Achilles heel kind of question. So that one might be right, the dismal and foreboding atmosphere that characterizes the narrator's new home. But it seems like the day's weather seems more specifically right. The dismal and foreboding atmosphere also seems right. The day's weather is a specific that seems right. And you can see I'm kind of between B and D, and I'm probably gonna go off the cliff here because I have this irritable mood and I can't really find the irritable mood except for the pulled myself together. See, what I'm doing here is I'm highlighting the words that if it comes down to something, those are the words that it's gonna come down to. So now I make a mistake of I'm really going for the 50% right here, but part of the problem is that throughout the move, I don't have a handle on because I haven't read the whole passage. And so I haven't read the last half of the passage where he actually cheers up and he meets this lady that makes him a little bit happy. I think the reason that I'm gonna get this wrong is that the lady that kind of brightens his mood, which is part of the move, I haven't read yet. So we don't really have that balance or understanding. I just have the fact that he's complaining about his environment. And then I'm focusing on the specificity too much of the weather versus the environment because it seems like the sky is gloomy. It doesn't say his apartment is gloomy. And so I'm getting a little bit too caught up in that specificity. But the problem is that the second half of this question is wrong, even though the other one is kind of like more vague and not as perfect. The second half of this is definitely wrong, but that's something that I literally cannot get unless I read the rest of the passage. So here I go, getting it wrong. Basically, after question number 5, I get to question number 6, and I'm actually going to get question number 6 wrong also. And part of that is because my brain is so screwed up by question number 5, and I'm so kind of rattled by it. And I know you guys probably can't tell that I'm not actually approaching number 6 the way that I teach students to approach it. I'm actually just like jumping around and trying to read the passage because I feel like I don't have a good sense of context, and I'm not doing it the right way, which is I should be plugging in each answer. I should be really focusing on getting my perfect answer first. And I'm like screwing up all my methods and doing it all wrong because I'm still caught up on number 5 inside my brain, which is not how you should be approaching the passage. So you can see how even when an answer like in number 6, which is vocab and context and shouldn't really depend on a really good passage read, is being approached, that I can still get it wrong because I get so ruffled by the fact that I felt like I didn't know what was going on in the question before it. So that's the other effect that can happen, is as you start to use a method that's not as ideal for you, you can also make other mistakes or start to get away from your discipline kind of things that you've learned when you introduce a new method. So what I would say with the evidence questions, one thing that I found is that when I do these questions, my method, when I have evidence questions and I really do a good map of the passage, I have an understanding of kind of what the right quote unquote neighborhood is for the answer choice before I even start looking at the quotations. And oftentimes that means I can omit 1 or 2 of the quotations that are given to me as possible lines for the evidence. And so I can move on these a lot more quickly. And I found myself in this test feeling like I was really slowed down. Like at this point, I'm like 15 minutes in and I'm only on questions 11 and 12, which is not very good pacing, especially for me. I usually do the first 10 questions in 10 minutes. So I am probably 4 or 5 minutes behind my normal pacing. And it's particularly problematic because I tend to take longer on history and science. And I already did the literature, which I tend to be faster at. So I know my pacing is starting to go here. I definitely feel a necessity to double and triple check like every single one of these lines and every single one of these answer choices because I really just don't have a frame of reference that I'm used to having that allows me to speed up sometimes. I'm gonna run out of time. I'm out of time. I don't know that I'm going to get 100%, but let's grade it and then we'll find out. Here's my analysis of this method and why I don't like it. 1, this method seemed to work a lot better on easier passages. So when I had like social science and when I had literature, this method was okay because I could kind of like read a little bit, find what I needed, read a little bit, find what I needed because everything makes sense. Where this method really grilled me were the science and history passages. Because if I am not able to read the entire history passage, those are super difficult passages. And if I don't understand the main idea of what this person is saying, the language is like super old fashioned. It's really hard to wrap my brain around. I didn't understand a lot of the main ideas. And so I didn't really know where to go. The other thing that I really struggled with is when I had to like synthesize information. So for example, when they have a question that's talking about like the graph and what is the passage support from the graph, I had no kind of background in the passage on the portions that were supporting the graph. So those kind of synthesis-y kind of questions where I'm having to pull information from over here and over here and over here, when I haven't read the whole passage, it's really hard for me to go and gather all that just to answer this one question. The other problem that I'm encountering is I'm running out of time. And some of you guys might think like, well, Brooke, if you're running out of time when you don't read the passages, how is it going to save you time to read the passage? But here's the deal. When I haven't read the passage at all, and then I'm going back to look for the information, I have to sometimes reread the thing 3 times because I don't even understand the context. I also am not 100% sure if that portion that I read has the answer that I need. And so there's a lot more anxiety too, because I like don't know what else is going on. I don't know quite where to look. If you're the kind of person that maybe you're aiming for a 600 or you're aiming for a 650, or realistically you're not trying to get every single question right because you know that that's not going to happen, maybe you could use this method. And then you can drop the questions that are super detailed questions where you know you're not going to have time to do them. I don't feel like I'm holding onto the handlebars on the bike, right? I feel like I'm like bicycling and the handlebars are just going on their own and I'm like, no hands, right? I don't really feel like I know what's going on or how to completely get it. And I feel like that anxiety also is really tough to deal with. But as an overall strategy, if you're really aiming for the highest score possible, do I think this is the way to maximize your ability to read into the nuance and to do these really tough questions? I'm going to give it a no. If you want to know what my tips are and all of my strategies are, you can find those at SupertutorTV.com. We've got a couple of online courses for the SAT and the ACT. I've also got some awesome strategy sessions. If you're trying to get like a near perfect score on the SAT and you feel like, gosh, Brooke, I don't need an entire course. Maybe I just need a little bit of a boost. We've got something called super seminars, and those are coming up the week of the SAT and the week before the week of the SAT. So check those out at SupertutorTV.com/superseminar. I'm going to try to do another one where I can show you guys what I'm capable of if I just try start to finish. So I will take another test that I don't know very well. And let's try that start to finish and we'll see how I do. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.